Hello guys, welcome back to the quantity surveying workshop and to another video. In today's video, we're going to be treating how to measure for the second part of the imported filling, which is the hardcore. If you remember, in our previous video, we did the first part of the imported filling, which was the measurements for the laterite. Now remember that imported filling are fillings that are obtained from external sites and being brought to the sites to fill certain areas. Example, laterite. So when laterite is brought off site, it is imported filling. Second example is what? Hardcore. So we're going to be needing these two materials when carrying out our construction, so we have to measure for them. Now, how do we measure for our hardcore? So for the hardcore filling, it is the same way that we've measured for our laterite filling that we're going to be measuring for our hardcore filling. But the only difference now is that the thickness of our laterite and our hardcore are two different things. Our laterite has a thickness of what? 150 mm, while our hardcore has a thickness of what? 300 mm. Now, this hardcore, some of you might be asking yourself what hardcore is. Are those big boulders or those big granites that are being placed on top the compacted laterite, right? After the laterite has been filled in the individual spaces of the rooms, it will be compacted. After they are being compacted, then hardcore is going to be laid inside the room parameters. When measuring for our hardcore, right, most of the job that we need to do here has already been done when we're measuring our laterite filling. Now, like I said, our hardcore is going to be laid in throughout the whole partitions. And if you remember, in our laterite filling, we had already deduced the length and the width of each of these rooms, these partitions in the foundation, right? So instead of redoing that, all we are going to be doing now is to go to our measured laterite filling, get the length, get the width of each of the rooms, and then multiply it by what? The new thickness of the hardcore, which is what? 300 mm. I don't know if that makes sense. So now, let me just make an example. In our laterite filling for this first room, we had a length of what? 4.38 meters by what? 3.78 meters, and the thickness was what? 150 mm, which is what? 0.15. But now in measuring for the hardcore, it is going to be what? 4.36 by what? 3.78 by a thickness of what? 0.30. So all we're going to be doing now is we're going to be carrying the measurements that we've done in our imported filling, and we're going to be bringing it into our hardcore filling, but the only difference is that the thickness would change. I hope that makes sense. So it is imperative that the imported filling that you've measured must be correct. If not, if there is a problem in your imported filling and you go and take that measurement back into your hardcore filling, there will be an error. I don't know if that makes sense. So it's important that when doing your imported filling, the laterite filling and the hardcore filling must be correct. So the first one is room 1, and as you can see in our drawing, this is room 1. So from the example that I gave, look at what we did here in the imported filling, right? I hope you can see it. So you can see that we've already measured for our length and our width. So this is our length, 4.36. This is our width, 3.78. But the only difference now is that the thickness would change, because this is not laterite filling we're doing hardcore filling. And the thickness of the hardcore is 0.30. So we're going to be taking this same thing to the hardcore filling, but what will change will just be the thickness. So for room 1, we're going to be having 4.36 by 3.78 by 0.30, and then we'll now close. So doing this, we measured for what? Room 1. So the next one is what? Room 2. So this is room 2, and we've already measured our length to be 4.81, and our width to be 4.35. So we're going to be carrying it here also. 4.81, 4.35 by 0.30, and then we'll now close. So the next one is room 3. And this is our room 3 over here. So for the room 3, look at what we did here. Our length is 4.59, our width is 4.36, and the thickness now will change. So we're going to be bringing it back there. So 4.59 by 4.36 by 0.30, and then we'll now close. So the next one on our list is room 4. So for room 4, this is our room 4. And what did we measure as our length and our width? So for our length, we measured it as 1,765, and our width, we measured it as 3,778. So this is the measurement, 1.77 meters by 3.78 meters. So we're going to be bringing this back here. So the length is 1.77 by 3.78 by 0.30, and then we'll now close. So doing this, we've measured for our room 4. The next one on our list will be the room 5. So if you look at our drawing, this long side is our room 5. And what did we measure the length of our room 5 to be? As you can see here, our length, which is the shorter side, is 1,313, and our width is 8,943. So now if you look at the measurements, the length is 1.31 by 8.94. So we're going to be bringing it back to the measurement of our hardcore, because that is the parameter for room 5. So we'll now book the length is 1.31, our width is 8.94, and the thickness is 0.30, and then we'll now close. So after doing this for room 5, we'll now move towards room 6. So as you can see in the drawing, this portion here is our room 6, and when we're measuring for our lateral filling, we said that the length is 1,845, and the width is 3,778. So these are the individual measurements, 1.85 by 3.78. So we're going to be bringing it back. So the length is 1.85, the width is 3.78, and our thickness of the hardcore is 0.30, and then we'll now close. So doing this, we've measured for room 6, and the next on our list is room 7. So for room 7, this is our room 7 here. So we're also going to be placing hardcore around this area. And what did we get as our length and width for our room 7? So for our length, as you can see here, we've calculated that the length is 4,329, and the width is 3,713, making it 4.33 and 3.71. So we're going to be bringing this length and this width down here. So we have 4.33 by 3.71 by 0.30, and then we'll now close. So doing this, we've booked for room 7, and next on the list is room 8. So this big side here is our what? Room 8. So we have to find the length side and the width side of our what? Room 8. And we've done that when we calculated for our laterite filling. So if you look at our previous work on the laterite filling, you would see that we calculated the length side for room 8 to be what? 6,275. And the width side, we calculated it to be what? 5,000. So we're going to be bringing it back here. So we'll write room 8. And then we have what? 6,275, which is what? 6.28. And the width side is what? 5.00. And the thickness of the hardcore is what? 0.30. And then we'll now what? Close. Doing this, we've measured for what? Room 8. So next on the list is what? Room 9. So this shorter side here is what? Room 9. So we have to find the length side and the width side of what? Room 9. So for room 9, this short side here is our what? Room 9. So we've already what? Calculated for the length and the width in when we're measuring for the laterite. So we're just going to be bringing those measurements back here. So if you look at this place, we said that the length for room 9 is what? 1,716, and the width is what? 3,713. So we're going to be bringing it back here. So the length in meters will be what? 1.72, and the width will be what? 3.71 by what? The thickness of the hardcore. So next will be what? Room 10. So for room 10, here is what? Room 10. We've already gotten the length of our room 10 to be what? 4,200 by what? 3,778. So we're going to be what? Booking. So the length is what? 4,200, which is 4.20, and the width is what? 3.78 by the thickness of the hardcore, which is what? 0.30, and then we'll now what? Close. So the last one we're going to be looking at will be what? Room 11. So for room 11, this last side is our room 11. So we're going to be bringing in the length and the width side of our what? Room 11. And as you can see here, we've calculated our length side to be what? 1,655, and the width side to be what? 4,840. So we're going to be bringing it back. So for room 11, our length side is what? 1,655, which is what? 1.66, and our width side is what? 4.84. And what's the thickness? 0.30, and then we'll now what? Close. So doing this, we've done the what? Measurements for our hardcore filling from room 1 down to what? Room 11. So what we're going to be doing now is that we're going to be finding the squaring column, and then we're going to be adding everything together to know the total quantity of hardcore that we're going to be needing in the partitions of this what? Building. So now let's do the maths. So for room 1, which is 4.36 times 3.78 times 0.30, and that's going to be equal to what? 4.94. So the total volume is what? 4.94. And then for room 2, 4.81 by what? 4.35 by what? 0.30, and that's going to be equal to what? 6.277, which is 6.28. So for room 3, 4.59 by 4.36 by 0.30 is equal to what? 6.00. So for room 4, 1.77 by 3.78 by 0.30 is equal to what? 2.007, which is 2.01. So for room 5, which is here, 1.31 by 8.94 by 0.30 is equal to what? 3.513, which is what? 3.51. So for room 6, 1.85 by 3.78 by 0.30 is equal to what? 2.097, which is what? 2.10. So for room 7, 4.33 by 3.71 by 0.30 is equal to 4.819, which is approximately 4.82. For room 8, we have 6.28 by 3.00 by 0.30 and is equal to what? 5.652, which is what? 5.65. For room 9, 1.72 by 3.71 by 0.30 is equal to what? 1.914, which is what? 1.91. For room 10, 4.20 by 3.78 by 0.30 is equal to what? 4.76. And for room 11, 1.66 by 4.85 by 4.84 by 0.30 is equal to 2.41. So after doing all this, we're going to be adding the what? Squaring column together to get the total volume of hardcore. So after adding everything in our squaring column, we had a total of what? 44.39. So after this, we're now going to what? Describe. Hardcore filling to the partitions (300 mm) thick, and then we'll now what? Close. So doing this, we've measured for our what? Hardcore filling. So after we finish measuring for our hardcore, the next item we're going to be looking for, or we're going to be measuring, is our what? Damp-proof membrane. It is not a must, but it is important to get a what? Suitable and efficient structure. You have to lay your what? Damp-proof membrane. Now the essence of this damp-proof membrane is to what? Prevent capillary movement on the what? Floor of the what? Building. So this damp-proof membrane will prevent damping capillary movement from below the ground up, so it will stop the water from rising. That's the essence of what? The DPM, damp-proof membrane. So how do we calculate for our damp-proof membrane? The damp-proof membrane is laid throughout the area of this what? Drawing. So we know that the unit of measurement for damp-proof membrane is in meter square. So we have to find the area of this what? Plan, because it is throughout the area of this plan that we are going to be laying our what? Damp-proof membrane. So now what can you notice now in this plan? You can notice now that the plan is what? Irregular in shape, right? As you can see, this is not a regular box. Starting, please, I want you to pay attention to the walls, not the column pits. Pay attention to the walls. So as you can see, from here to this point and from here to this point would make what? The area of the big square. And then from this point to this point and from this point to this point would make the area of this smaller side, because as you can see, this is not a regular shape. So we have to be breaking it in such a way that we can find the shapes easily. So if you look at this, we have a drawing like this. This is how our drawing is like. So let's just say that this line is the external what? Line of the wall, right? So the damp-proof membrane is going to be laid throughout this entire area. So how do we get the area of this irregular shape? So we're going to be cutting this side here. We'll find the out to add dimension of the length and the width of this bigger shape. So once we've done that, we can get the area of this big side. So after doing that, we will now get the area of this shorter side, from this point down to this point, and from this point down towards this point. After doing that, we can now use that to get the area for this shorter side here. So after getting the two areas, we'll add them together, and that will give us the total area for our DPM. I hope that makes sense. So that is the approach we are going to be using to measure for our damp-proof membrane. So now to find that, first things first, we need to get the out-to-out dimension of our length side and our width side for the big square, right? So now if you look at this, I want you to pay attention to this side. You can see that the dimension given here is center to center. So what we're going to be doing now is that we're going to be getting the total length of this center to center dimension from call out A down to call out F. But mind you, we're not looking for the center to center dimension. We are looking for the out to out dimension. So now after we've now gotten the total length of our center to center dimension, we're now going to be adding this thickness, half of the thickness of this wall at this side, and half of the thickness of this wall at this side, and that will give us the total length of this particular block work from the out to out dimension. I hope that makes sense. So similarly, we're going to be doing the same thing for the longer side. So from call out 1, we have to determine the dimension, the center to center dimension from call out 1 down to call out 6. So after we've done that, we will now be adding half the thickness of this block work here and half of the thickness of this block work here, and that will give us the total out to out dimension from this edge down towards this edge. So once we have gotten that, we can now get the area for this big square. And similarly, we'll do the same thing for the shorter side. So for the shorter side, since we have the center to center dimension from call out 6 down to call out 7, we are going to be looking for the dimension from this edge of the block work here. I don't know if you can see it. From this edge of the block work here down to this edge of this block work here. And similarly, we are going to be looking for the dimension from this edge of this block work down to this edge. And when we get that, we will now be getting the area for this shorter side. I hope that makes sense. So we're going to be starting with the longer side. So for the longer side, we want to determine the length from call out A down towards F. So we'll now do this. The length side. So what is our first dimension? Our first dimension is 4,008. So write it down. 4,008. The second dimension is 3,943. So write it down. The third dimension is 637. The fourth dimension is 560, which is this, and the last dimension is 4,033. So after this, we will now add 2 by half of the thickness of the block work, which is half the thickness for this side and half the thickness for this side. So we know that the block work is 230. So we're going to be adding 2 by half of 230, and that's going to equal to 230. So we'll have to now add all of these parameters together. So 4,008 plus 3,943 plus 637 plus 516 plus 4,033 plus 230 is equal to 13,411. So we'll write it down. 13,411. So this is the out to out dimension for the longer side of this drawing. 13,411. From this edge of the block work down to the extreme edge of this block work, it is 13,411. So we're going to be doing the same thing from this edge down to this edge. So for the width side, we know that the first dimension is 1096. We'll write it down. The second dimension is 944. The third dimension is 2545. The fourth dimension is 452. Fifth dimension is 1543. Sixth dimension is 2075. The next one is 2484. The next one is 768. The next one is 1178. And after that, we are not going to be adding half the thickness of this block work here and half the thickness of this block work here. And we know that the thickness of our block work is 230. So we're going to be adding 2 by half of 230, which is going to be equal to 230. So we'll now add everything together. So 1096 plus 944 plus 2545 plus 452 plus 1543 plus 2075 plus 2484 plus 768 plus 1178 plus 230 is equal to 13,315. So this is the width side. So our length side is 13,411, and our width side is 13,315. So with this, we can now measure for the first area, which is this bigger side here. I don't know if that makes sense. So now we'll now measure what is our length. Our length in meters will be 13.41. And then our width in meters will be 13.32. So the big area, which is area 1, will now become 13.41 by 13.32, and then we'll now close because it is measured in meter square. So we'll now do the same thing for area 2, which is this shorter side here. This shorter side here. So to get the length from this edge down to the edge of this column here, what we're going to be doing now is this. Look at columns 6 and 7. We were given 1920, and this dimension is center to center dimension. So in order to come out from this center down to this edge, what are we going to be doing? We're going to be minusing half the thickness of this block work. This block work here. We're going to be minusing this half here. So once we minus this half now, it is going to give us from here down towards here. But we are looking for from this edge down to the outside side of this column here. And we know that our column for column type 5 is 300 by 300, meaning that from this center line down to this edge will be half of 300, which is 150. So whatever we get from this edge down to this callout 7, we're going to be adding half the thickness of column type 5, which is 150. So whatever we get will be the dimension from this edge of the block work down towards this edge of this block work, which is here. I don't want to stain this thing much more, so I hope you can understand. So if you trace this block work here, that is the edge we're trying to attain. So now we're not going to be doing the same thing for this call out here. from this point down to call out what? E. So I'm going to be adding this dimension, and this dimension together. That will give us what? The total dimension from call out C to E. And then we're going to be adding half the thickness of what? Column type 5 at this side and what? At this side. And that will give us the total out-to-out dimension for this what? Block work. I hope that makes sense. So with that, we're now going to measure. So for the second measurement, for the second area, our length, we know that our length from here to here is what? 1920. So write 1920. So what are we lessing? We are lessing what? Half the thickness of what? This block work. So we will now less half of what? 230, and that's going to be equals to what? 115. So 1920 minus 115 is equal to what? 1805. So it means that from the edge of this word here down to call out 7 is what? 1805. So we now have to add the thickness of what? Column type 5, half the thickness of column type 5. And you know that half the thickness of column type 5 is what? 150. So we're going to be adding what? Half of what? The thickness of column type 5, 300, and that will be equals to what? 150. So 1805 plus 150 is equal to what? 1955. So this is our what? Length from this edge of the block work down to the edge, the external side of this what? Horizontal what? Block work. So the next one we're going to be doing for this side of the what? Block work from call out C to E. So for the width side, we're going to be trying to get the total length of our what? Call out the center line from C to E. So we're going to be adding this dimension, and what? This dimension together. So the first dimension is what? 3943. The second dimension is 637. And the last dimension is what? 560. So when you add everything together, what are you going to be having? 3943 plus 637 plus 560 is equal to what? 5140. So 5140 is the total length of the center to center dimension from call out C. From call out C, which is from this point here down to what? Call out E, which is this point here. I hope that makes sense. So now we're not going to be adding what? Half the thickness of what? This column here, and half the thickness of what? This column here. So here will be 150, here will be 150. So we're going to be adding what? 2 by half of what? 300, and that is going to be equals to what? 300. So which is 150 for this side and 150 for this side. So 3140 plus 300 is equal to what? 3440. And then you close. So doing this, we've gotten our what? Length side and our width side for the what? Shorter area, which is area 2. So with that, we can now what? Measure. So for area 2, the length is what? 1955, which is what? 1.96, and the width is what? 3440, which is what? 3.44. And then we'll now what? Close. So we're going to be getting the what total area for area 1 and area 2, and we're going to be adding them together because they are the same work item, which is what our DPM. So 13.41 times 13.32 is equal to what 178.62. And for area 2, 1.96 plus 3.44 is equal to what 5.40. So when you add everything together, which is 178.62 plus 5.40, is going to be equals to what 184.02. So 184.02 is our what total area for the what DPM of this what building. So with this, you can now what describe by saying, let's say vortex damp-proof membrane or material of the same sort. So this is our description for what our damp-proof membrane, and our total area for the damp-proof membrane is what 184.02. So now, after doing your damp-proof membrane, the good part of this section of work is that your the measurement for your damp-proof membrane, you can use it as the same measurement for your what BRC mesh, because it is the same area that you've laid your what damp-proof membrane. That would be the same area that you will lay your what BRC mesh. So instead of recalculating everything, you can just take the total area that you what calculated for your damp-proof membrane and use it as the same area for your what BRC mesh, because BRC mesh is measured in what meter square, same as your damp-proof membrane, and the BRC mesh is going to be laid in the same area as your what damp-proof membrane. As you can see in the drawing, look at BRC mesh. It is throughout the partitions, meaning that it is going to cover the entire area of this what floor. I don't know if that makes sense. So we're just going to be what bringing back our what measurements for the DPM for our what BRC mesh. So our BRC mesh would be the same what measurements for our what damp-proof membrane. So we're going to be what recording 184.02. That would be our area for our what BRC mesh. Or rather, you can bring this same measurement that you've done here, this measurement and this measurement together, bring it to your dimension column and bring out the squaring that you've already calculated for, and then get the total area. Just basically the same thing you've done here, just write it down here and then you will describe. But me, I'm following the faster route by just bringing out the what total area. So the squaring column will be what 184.02. So we will now write, as you can see, this is the type of BRC mesh that is said. BRC mesh A142 top plus 150 on the floor area, and then we'll close. So doing this, we've measured for our what BRC mesh. So with this, we've come to the end of this video, guys. In this video, we learned how to measure for our hardcore filling, our damp-proof membrane, and our what BRC mesh. In the next video, we are going to be looking at how to what measure for our what oversized concrete and our what formwork. So we've come to the end of today's video, guys. If you had adequate knowledge from this video, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel because it helps the channel grow. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.